This is a production of Cornell University.
So today I'm going to talk about AI facilitate the scientific discovery from big data and process-based modeling. And probably as you may aware, and AI is a big area. It's so many different methods and so powerful in different areas. So today I just want to share the experience my lab have and using AI in our research. So today I'm going to talk about why we developed a product, which is as an AI modeling tool, and how we use the product to understand the mechanisms underlying soil carbon storage and to understand the climatological temperature sensitivity of soil organic carbon along soil profile. Now my lab is developing a so-called BEAM, biogeochemistry informed neural network, as another AI modeling tool. So in each of the slides, I have bottom to indicate the different part of my talk. And probably most of us has been influenced so much by like ChatGPT regarding AI method. And ChatGPT basically is used so-called foundation models, which are pre-trained with massive data sets. And then when user to make a question or make a request to ChatGPT, and then the ChatGPT will use the new data sets, relevant data sets to that particular questions to do fine tuning before they make answer your questions. So the ChatGPT, well, there are many of those so-called large language models available. Those large language models require lots of data. When we use it, most of the time we use it as a black box model. And these kind of AI tools can generate results that may not physically or biologically consistent with our understanding. So AI tool without clear mechanistic understanding may not effectively help us to understand the science. And but last year, two Nobel Prizes awarded to physics in physics and chemistry to those scientists to make a great contribution to advances in chemistry and physics. And especially like the award in chemistry, they certainly can use the AI to advance science. So it's and particularly the Professor John Hopfield recently made notes that basically he think that word is understandable, and he said that you should be able to take anything apart, understand the relationship between its constituents, do experiments on that basis to be able to develop a quantitative understanding of its behavior. And so how to use the AI as a scientific tool is a major issues we have been thinking about. Today, I'm going to introduce a AI tool my lab has developed, a so-called PRODA, that's basically combine process-based modeling and neural network and also data assimilation approach. Process-based model is used a lot of understanding about the process, and the neuron and the machine learning most of the time used as a tool for data mining. And then the product the tool we have developed is try to combine the best out of that capability of data mining through machine learning and process-based understandings. Now I'll discuss why we developed this approach ODA as a tool to understanding. We try to understand the soil carbon dynamic. Probably as many of you know, the soil is so critical for agriculture, and now also so critical for carbon sequestration towards the so-called climate smart agriculture. So how to predict the soil carbon dynamic and storage is a major issue. And in this figure, on the y-axis is a model predicted the soil carbon density from 11 models that was used in the IPCC fifth assessment. And x-axis is observation-based soil carbon density. So you can see from this figure that if the model can predict a soil carbon density well enough, then most of those dots are supposed to be scattered around the one-to-one line. But you can see from this figure, the model basically has no ideas what's happening in the real world. This uncertainty in model Earth system modeling actually propagates to those prediction regarding the land carbon sink and the climate dynamics. So this is one of the three major sources that cause the uncertainty in future climate prediction. So my lab has been tried to understand and try to improve how we can predict the soil carbon dynamic well. And in order to predict the soil carbon or anything, if we want to make a model make more realistic prediction, we need a perfect model structure, perfect model parameterization, and also forcing variables. So my lab has examined all those three elements and one by one. First, we developed a framework to unify all the land carbon cycle and the nitrogen and phosphorus models use a matrix equations. As long as those models use the so-called pool and fluxes structures, so we can unify all of them. So basically, we studied the bunch of models to try to understand what's the fundamental principles underlying them. And then we discovered that no matter what kind of model structure, as long as they use the so-called pool and fluxes schemes, and all the model can be represented by these matrix equations that accounts carbon input into the system. And then this is a carbon dynamic, basically carbon transformation in the system, and also including release from the system. So basically, this is a matrix equation. We have converted about 40 models and into matrix form, and also another group from Max Planck Institute in Germany. They also converted about the 20 nonlinear microbial model into this matrix form. So now we have that. Once we have the unified framework, we can study models at a different level of complexity under one overarching theory. And here is the examples. And the National NCAR, National Center for Atmospheric Research, they developed the so-called community land model with carbon nitrogen dynamics. This is probably literally is one of the most complicated model in the whole world. They used about nearly 1,000 pools to describe carbon nitrogen dynamics, and use six modules to describe them. Now my lab have converted into two equations for carbon and nitrogen cycles in vegetation and soil. And once we converted to two equations, this structure become highly modular, and we can make a much more powerful diagnostic capacity. We make the spin up much faster by about 50 times. So once we converted to this unified framework, now we can pinpoint the sources of model uncertainties. In these particular we used 8 models and ranging from 10 model with 2 pool versus Orchid model from France that's with 101 the pools. No matter how complicated or the complexity, we can all represent the different models in one unified frame. Basically, model structure is the same. So once we represented all those models, all the model in the same framework, then we did an experiment. So we used these 8 models and feed the same forcing and also GPP. And then we find out that actually more under among the models, the uncertainties diverges as time goes. So next, since now we have unified framework, now we can standardize the parameter for 8 models. And then we can shrink these model uncertainties to 0. So what does that mean, those study? That means this simulation modeling approach that has been used by community for 60 years. So the simulation modeling approach, basically we develop the model by given structure, and then we assign the model the parameter value and use metadata to drive to predict. So those simulation modeling does not use much data to improve model parameterization. So that lead to the divergency model predictions. So next step, we use the so-called data assimilation, try to understand how model parameterization will influence model dynamic. Now, many people use the digital twin to describe this data assimilation approach. Basically, try to use the model, mimic the real world as much as we can. So data assimilation, the idea is we are not only need the model structure, but we also use the relevant observations through data assimilation to estimate the parameter, make the model to predict the real world phenomena as much as we as we can. So that's why the digital twin came from, the prediction. My lab has been doing this since about 20 years ago. My first postdoc I hired to do this is 203 to 205 at regional scales. And in the past about 20, especially first 15 years, we did a variety of analysis use these digital twin techniques. And certainly we improved this model prediction very much, a lot. The residue decreased, the spatial representation of the soil carbon improved, but still the accuracy is not ideal. The accuracy change, improved to about R square of 0.4. But still, no matter what we do, still we cannot improve them further. So then we thinking about this issue. Why, once we use the data, the digital twin still cannot perform well enough. So we try to understand the reason. Basically, the parameter value in those models, in those Earth system model at the global scale, assumed to be constant over space and time, but actually this assumption may be problematic. This assumption works for model to be used at the local scale for short term, it's fine. But once we do the long term and the large scale simulation, it may not works. Basically, parameter in the models is a representative property for those processes. And for example, the soil property and the microbial dynamic in Ithaca, in the model, it's assumed the same as in Africa or South America. So this is, biologically or ecologically it doesn't make sense, but the currently models still make those assumptions. So once we realize that, and we propose that we really need spatially and temporary varying parameter in order to make the digital twin works well. So that's how we incorporate the deep learning into this our scheme to develop we developed the so-called process guided deep learning and the data-driven modeling. And basically at the data assimilation approach, we add the deep learning. So now you can see we used about 60,000 vertical profile for soil carbon worldwide and put it into this product. Now we get the R square 0.62. So this is this R square accuracy is very close, very similar to those machine learning without any process, basically so-called soil mapping. People use soil mapping, that's they use the neural network without any process. So this is accuracy, it's almost reached the level that we so far we cannot do much at at least at the global scale. So now hopefully now I introduced basically discussed why we used introduced the AI modeling tools to do to combine the process understanding and the data mining. So first issue we try to address use this method is so-called microbial to evaluate microbial rule in soil carbon, organic carbon formation and persistence. And recently, the soil scientists and led by Michael Schmidt and the Johannes also contributed to this paper. The new framework emphasized the role of microbe and mineral in soil organic formation and persistence. But we still need to find a way to evaluate the relative importance of various processes in soil. So in this particular study, we first defined the so-called microbial carbon use efficiency as biomass, microbial biomass produced divided by substrate uptake. And this actually microbial carbon use efficiency has represented dual rules. So one point is microbe consume the soil organic substrate to get energy and growth. And also the soil microbe also contribute to soil organic substrate. So the relative rule, relative importance of those two rules and might determine how soil organic carbon formation and persistence. So one hypothesis floating in the literature is that the higher carbon use efficiency will lead to the accrual of soil organic carbon storage as long as the microbial carbon use efficiency stimulate microbial biomass and necromass formation and then contribute to soil organic carbon. But also the other ideas has been greatly discussed in the literature that if microbial carbon use efficiency increased and microbial biomass increased and lead to more extracellular enzyme activities, actually soil organic carbon can decrease. So as I mentioned in our the product, we have model structures that represent the microbial activities. Now we can see under what kind of conditions the soil organic carbon will increase versus decrease with the microbial carbon use efficiency. We found out two critical parameters. One is the residence time for microbe, another is the residence time for enzyme. And then those different parameters will lead to the different patterns. So now the issue is what the real world, the observation will tell us about those parameters. So that's the basically, and if we can use the real world data to tell us, then we can evaluate the relative importance of those processes represented in this model. So what we did is as I mentioned, we used the 60,000 vertical soil profile data and to constrain the model. And then we estimate each of the 7 components that contribute to the soil organic carbon storage. And then we make the evaluation to see their relative importance, use 2 types of sensitivity. And one type of sensitivity is so-called spatially constant parameter versus variance parameter. As I mentioned earlier, that currently Earth system model all use the constant parameter over the globe. Now we estimate the spatially variance parameter. So if we use the spatially constant parameter versus variance parameter, we can see that microbial carbon use efficiency has the largest impact on the simulated carbon. We also did the sensitivity analysis, which has been done regularly in the modeling, or also indicate microbial carbon use efficiency is most important. So we also use the model generate the relationship of soil organic carbon versus microbial carbon use efficiency, and also observation use meta-analysis to basically verify the model predictions. So this is basically one of the study we have done to use these AI facilitated AI modeling tools to understand the mechanisms. So next, we also use this tool for another study, try to understand the mechanisms. So another study we call the climatological temperature sensitivity for soil organic carbon to warming. So what we did is we first, again, use this global database of vertical soil carbon, and then we use a different layer of soil. We use each of 2 centimeters as soil layer, and then we get the data from this database, and then we use this at each thin layer we have soil organic carbon versus temperature. We get the temperature sensitivity, and then use those along the different layer, we get the observed apparent temperature sensitivity Q10 versus depth. Basically, this indicates that temperature sensitivity for soil organic carbon at the surface is highest, most sensitive, and then towards the deep layer, the sensitivity is very, very low. So that's basically observation-based. So now, these observation-based gradings of temperature sensitivity could be caused by lots of mechanisms and very complicated. So now how can we know which mechanisms really influence them? In the real world, it's very difficult to do experiment. And certainly we need the innovative approach to do experiment. But now we have modeling. We will see whether we can use model AI modeling to help tease that apart. So this is observation, observe the part apparent temperature function. We use the microbial-based model, nonlinear model, after the use the data assimilation. You can see we cannot reproduce that pattern. And we use the CLM model and before product, so this pattern also doesn't reproduce. But after we use the product to train the CLM, and then we find that the pattern is very similar. So now we can use model as digital twin to represent observation. And also we need to make sure that actually the model, the intrinsic parameter, the parameter for intrinsic temperature sensitivity actually relatively constant. So this apparent one has a huge depth dependency, but the intrinsic one is more or less constant. So this is a huge contrast. So now we have a digital twin to the real world pattern. Now we can use this digital twin to understand what causes this apparent temperature sensitivity, why that's different from the model intrinsic temperature sensitivity, use this matrix equation. As I mentioned, that we use this matrix equation to unify all the land carbon cycle models as long as they use the so-called pool and flux structures. So in these equations, there are 7 terms. I mean, there are 6 terms, but represent 7 processes. Now we can tease them apart, use processes. So what we did, the first things we used manipulate A parameter matrix A. A is basically transformation matrix. That and another is K. K is decomposability vectors. So we make the globally uniformed A matrix, and now you can see that once we use the globally unified A, it's this is the apparent sensitivity. This is intrinsic. Now we manipulate the A matrix, and then we lift the Q10 vertical profile closer to the intrinsic one. Now we unify the K separately, also make it closer to the intrinsic one. But once we unify both A and K, actually this is very close to the intrinsic one. So based on this, we can see that probably those processes related to microbial carbon transformation and the absorption, and also related to organic carbon decomposability, played a huge role to influence the temperature sensitivity in the real world. So we also manipulate other parameters like water scalar and the depth scalar. They do have effect, but cannot match the intrinsic one well. So here, if we unify all these parameters, actually theoretically we can see this even temperature sensitivity could increasing with the depth. So this is opposite from the observed apparent one. So this is the challenge now. Now we can use a digital twin to try to see what the potential mechanisms underline those observed pattern. But the challenge is still how to get empirical evidence. to support those AI modeling analysis. So this is another challenge. So now currently our lab is developing so-called biogeochemistry informed neural network by a graduate student, Howdy, and he's a second year graduate student. And then after he joined our lab, now he put the matrix equation into neural network. And then this we find out the accuracy is very high, even slightly higher than the product. The computationally much faster than product by 50 times. And as I mentioned, our matrix equation spin up already faster than the regular model by 50 times. Now this is another 50 times over that 50 times. So basically, now being make the spin up faster by 2,000, more than 2,000 times faster than the current model. So this offer the exponential power, and we try to do the transfer learning, try to use this technique for the carbon farming at the farm level. So let me make a summary. By 2017, we identified the issue that need to be solved by AI. We luckily enough recruit a graduate student who developed a product, and he used the product to study the microbial carbon use efficiency and the soil organic carbon relationship. And he also used this to study the model in convergency. And another graduate student studied the intrinsic versus apparent Q10. Now, Howdy is developing the being. And currently, we have a few postdocs, graduate students, now using being to study time course of forest dynamic and disturbance regime and greenhouse gas emissions. So what we have learned in the past is basically AI modeling can enable us to discover mechanisms underlying systems behavior from big data and a process-based model. AI is very powerful to accelerate computational efficiency, achieve high accuracy in the model data fitting is basically accuracy in digital twin now, and democratize the scientific discovery. But AI is a tool like any other tools, and it is powerful only if we can identify scientific issues that need AI to address. And many people contributed to our studies. I cannot, I don't have time to say each of them. We also get basically funding from AI Institute, and we also supported by AI for Science, the Schmidt Foundation, and Sviata LTR side, Spruce side, funding from NSF, DOE, and the USDA. And also take this opportunity to do some advertisement. If any of your students at Cornell, you are welcome to join our training course. It's free for Cornell people, but we do take a little bit tuition fee for people outside. Thank you very much.
Yeah, no problem. I mean, your presentation is very nice. I'm just wondering, in the data simulation part, you mentioned that the parameters are constant when you apply the data simulation method in global simulation. But I know some data simulation methods which can also update the parameters. So I just wondering what's the difference between these methods and the product.
Well, you said update, probably you're talking about like karma filter.
Yeah.
Karma filter has been used very widely by engineering scientists or professors, I mean the disciplines. And it's true, the gamma filter is due the time, time update once you have observation along the time. So this one thing is this gamma filter probably may not be useful tool for carbon cycle or broadly speaking biogeochemical cycle research because it's update the state and the parameter at the same times. Once you update the state variable, sorry, this is get to very technical, and then these become that cannot get the mass balance. So but the almost all the Earth system model, you still use the constant parameter now.
Yeah, thank you. And another problem is that I'm just wondering, I noticed that you use the AI model to train the parameters, to optimize the parameters, but you have to get the true value of the parameter. It's very different to get this data. So I'm just wondering, how do you get the parameters?
Well, that's a very important question. And usually those parameters is not observable in the real world. It's right.
Yeah.
Most of them. So what we can do is we use the so-called OSSE, this observational system simulation experiment, to test whether the method can be authentically reproduced. So OSS, again, this is a very technical issue, and the OSSE is basically use the model given the parameter to use the model to produce the output, and then use the output to train the model again to see how accurately the recovered parameter comparing to original parameter. So in both Bing and the product, we did this experiment.
Okay, I understand. So you mean the parameters also be reversed, and then you use the this reverse parameters to validate. Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. Yeah.
Thank you. Those are great questions. Sorry, it's a very technical talk.
Yeah. Yiqi, I had a question. So you had, at one point you were looking at the microbial parameters and you had identified that the residence time of the microbial biomass and then the residence time of the enzymes were having an impact.
Yeah.
Were you able to see which of those two parameters maybe mattered the most, or if could you comment on how important those parameters were for your soil carbon estimation?
Yeah, those let me see if I can get back to the slides, and so you can see the different combination of those two parameters will really influence. So for example, like this one is the microbial turnover time of microbe is 5, and this that's make it so let me see if this enzyme turnover time, if enzyme turnover time fast, and then these become negative. So those are model exercise, and then actually once we do data assimilation, we can constrain each of the parameter. So apparently, because now we get the most relationship probably look like this. So look like probably this enzyme turnover time. I really, we need to check the real data, but based on the relationship we got after data assimilation, probably somewhere around here. So the microbe turnover time around 1 and 1.5 probably.
Okay, thanks.
Well, if you need the real, I mean, the exactly the value, we can dig into our results.
Great, thanks. We have a question also in the chat from Allison. So she has two questions. The first is, what do you mean by AI can be a force for democratizing data?
Well, not the data probably. So what I meant is, my lab has been doing the data simulation for about 20 some years. And actually now we find that it's much easier and can do data simulation in a much better way. So actually this is probably, much easier to use. And, before each of, when I take a new student or postdoc, they always take a long time to learn about data simulation. I now Bing probably make the process much easier.
Okay. And the second question she has is, you ended with a really strong point that AI is only powerful if researchers are answering important questions. So how can you gain input on what the most important questions stakeholders need answers to? And what questions do your team thinks are the most important to address with AI going forward?
Well, this is a very great question on questions. Well, I guess talking with the farmers and also questioning scientific. I mean, each of the scientists, generate their own questions in a different way, and certainly like the kind of a seminar and the lab meeting and talk with the farmers, and really depends on your own work. I guess different people have a different way to generate the questions. I understand that probably I didn't answer your question very well.
Do we have any other questions in the audience? Yeah, I have one over here. Why don't you go ahead and I played with the microphone, so let's see if Yiqi can hear you.
Thank you for the presentation. It seems some of it went over my head, but it really seems like they made you earn your tenure here. It's really interesting.
So hold on, Yiqi, can you hear him?
Yes.
Yeah. If I understand correctly, a lot of your research is based in force, but when changing and applying it to agriculture, we have like management practices that can influence these dynamics that you're describing. Do you see a possibility of using kind of your work and moving it towards like agricultural focused questions, despite the complexity of like different management decisions on a spatial scale like the globe?
Yes, that's a great question. And certainly, after I joined the soil and crop sciences session, this is a very important issues we are exploring. And certainly, we don't want to just the work on forest or grassland or global scales, but also try to make some contributions to soil and crop sections, sciences sections. And so what our thinking is probably in the towards the end. Can you still let me see? Can you see my slides? Let me see.
Yes.
Toward the end, we are, I only mentioned very briefly, we are currently doing so-called transfer learning. And probably if you may know that currently none of the soil model can predict well. If even even we have like being or product, we still cannot apply to the individual farmers, because these individual farmer may not have enough data. So what we are thinking about is so-called transfer learning. So the idea is very similar to like ChatGPT. ChatGPT trained lots of, trained with a lot of data, big data. But when it answer your particular questions, and ChatGPT borrow the information from other data sets, try to answer your questions. So this is actually is called transfer learning. So the idea if we apply to here is if we can train the model, I mean the let's being or product with lots of data at the global scales, then we supposed to can apply that knowledge to a particular farm. So this is the idea we are exploring, try to apply to the individual farms. So this idea probably also applicable to any any of these subject areas, for example, crop yield or the weed control and some other issues. Yeah, nitrogen fixation. Yeah. So this is the kind of things we are thinking about. I understand we still haven't made a great contribution to soil and crop session for individual farm. I mean, for farm yet. Does it make sense?
Yeah, thanks, Yiqi. We're at time, so if we could thank Yiqi again.
Well, thank you all for listening and for great questions.
This has been a production of Cornell University, on the web at cornell.edu.